have it.
Yes.
Where'd my thing go?
We're discussing a matter of pending litigation with Hampshire Recreation.
Okay. Okay. So why did it cut off?
There we go.
You're now live.
All right, we're on TV, everybody. Watch what you say. But it is cable, so you have a little bit of leeway.
Well, Ashley, is it? Well, all the board members aren't on, are they? It's only 3, right?
We're missing John and Richard. Yes.
Richard.
Oh, so you have a quorum?
Yeah, but we won't start till 7. John will come on right around 7. Richard should be here soon.
Oh, fair enough. I was just gonna suggest that maybe not turn the recording on until we get ready to actually.
Oh, they like it early so they know everything's working.
LMC TV requires that.
Right, so we turned it on early so they can do their tests and everything.
Okay, fair enough.
They've asked us to turn it on around 1:15.
So Kathy, can you introduce me to the other 2 gentlemen Mr. Long and Mr.
Mr. Long is our new planning director. He joined us,
Yes.
was it last week?
Yes, last week. Yes.
So you can introduce yourself because this is the first time we're all meeting him.
Yeah.
Long,
So,
how are you?
hello. I'm William Long. I'm again, like you said, your new planning director. Just to give you a little understanding of my background, I've been in the field for 20 years. My first job in planning was with Nassau County, and then I went and worked in the town of Islip, and then from there in New Jersey, and then Mount Vernon, and now I'm with the village.
You're in the big leagues.
Been all over the region.
Welcome aboard.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
welcome
Thank you,
aboard.
thank you. Yes.
And Will, you know Frank, right? You know Frank.
Yeah,
our building
absolutely. Work
inspector?
very closely with Frank.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Frank, so Frank is joining us as,
He's the
Frank
acting
is-
building inspector.
oh, see, I didn't know
Frank
that.
is
I
going
didn't
to
know.
join us tonight to
Frank,
talk
nice-
about
nice to meet you.
Phillips Park, the 355 Phillips Park Road.
Nice meeting you, Frank.
You know, I tried to set this up so you guys could see the lake in the background because of what happened during the Hampshire. And I was going to say, this is real, it's not fake. But the backlighting was too much and you couldn't see me and you could see the lake.
What's going on with the lake?
I'm at the lake.
No, but is it like flooding or something? Is it?
No,
Oh,
it's just,
you were
it's
just saying you could see it.
it was a pretty background.
Oh,
It's real.
I was going to have it on my background as my background.
okay.
It's real.
But the lighting didn't work. I couldn't control the lighting. You know, I wanted somebody to comment about who does she think she is?
This next meeting, we'll all have lake backgrounds.
Yes,
You can do
yes.
fake one.
Is anybody going down to the city? Cindy, are you going down to the city?
I went on Monday. Why? Something I should see?
No. I'm asking you, how was the trip? How was the whole Metro North experience? And
Oh, we drove, and it felt like normal. There was tons of traffic and trucks, and it seemed like normal.
Seems like normal up here, but a lot of people are wearing masks, except in Walmart. But now they have to in Walmart.
Lou, you're not going in, or are you on vacation?
No. I never been on vacation. I mean, I was asked to go do an emergency in the Bronx, the North Central Bronx Hospital.
Oh,
So I've been there building a whole bunch of
ICU
beds.
oh, yeah.
for the second wave.
Yeah, so I've been there. So we have basically built 2 floors of about
Wow.
153 beds, for
Wow.
COVID patients. So I've been there since. I've been in Roosevelt Island and North Central Bronx, just doing emergency work. So since March 15th.
Wow. So just for the past 4 months. So you built out 2 floors of ICU beds in 4 months.
Yes,
Pretty good.
$6,500 in actually 3 months.
Wow, good for you.
Was the
And
24th?
where were you on Roosevelt? You were Kohler?
Yes, I was at Kohler.
Yeah,
And Kohler is a bit complicated because it's a bunch of, that's the different, Kohler is split into two different hospitals.
right,
But I was at Kohler and then then I went to North Central, but then I went back to
Right.
Kohler.
Hmm.
So,
All right, hope we don't need them.
yeah,
I hope
I
not.
hope we don't either. We had enough. We had enough. But look what's going on right now elsewhere in the country. 31 states now have to come in quarantine if they come into the tri-state area. People from 31 states out of 50. Oh, well. We wish them all well. And everybody,
Just, are we gonna do the tree law later and do the applicants first?
we're not doing the tree law today at all. All we're doing is acknowledging we got it. It's on the agenda for September 9th. You didn't read
Acknowledging
your,
receipt of it.
you didn't read your agenda.
I did, and it wasn't made clear to me if that was for, that the trustees needed it back before our, whatever. That's my,
This item will be reviewed and discussed at the September 9th meeting.
The Board of Trustees public hearing on that is September 29th.
okay, so we do have time. Well, I'm
Plenty
ready
of
to
time.
go, so,
Right. It's complicated.
yeah, I have a
So
lot of,
we have time.
good.
Right. No, we're gonna do Phillips Park Road, we're gonna do Orient Avenue, and then we go into a short executive session.
Got it.
Uh-oh, I hear thunder.
I hear thunder too.
We lost Lou for a minute there. He just rejoined.
We lost Mr.
Well-
Long too.
Well, Luke uses his phone to dial, to come in.
Oh, there's Richard.
Here's Richard. It's 6:55. It's almost time for John to join us.
You didn't lose me. I just have
Okay.
to wait for a second, that's all.
Yeah, that's okay. We have 5 minutes.
Fair enough.
We will start at 7. I like starting things on time. If we can.
But I will share this with you about the tree ordinance because I heard when you mentioned it. So I have an educational reading. I send out educational readings every now and then when I come across them. And I have one about about crafting and drafting tree ordinances. So I'll be sending that to you.
Send it to the Board of Trustees.
This has been ongoing for 8 years.
We talked about it in
I-
2007.
Yeah.
So,
I wish we had that article 8 years ago.
yeah, right. You know, a lot of people everybody sees trees differently. You know, a lot of people see trees as a nuisance. Unfortunately, we need them to breathe. They're not really a nuisance. I know. A lot of people just cut them down because they don't want to deal with them. But how is everybody else? Everybody else good?
Yeah, we've got thunder and lightning now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll just keep our fingers crossed that I'm not the only one on this meeting.
You
Because I'm not. Right.
The phone number should still work if we all get disconnected. It's just, we wouldn't be able to see anything on the screen, but the conference call-in number should still work.
Yeah.
So that's what we should do if we're somehow disconnected.
Not the executive session conference
No,
call
no,
number.
no.
The other number.
Will it still be recorded and transcribed, Ashley?
Um,
It has to be recorded and transcribed.
as long as my computer doesn't go off,
Okay.
it should still be recorded, or Williams, because Williams he's also a co-host, so should be okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. We may be worried about something that's not going to happen. So. Hi, Brian.
Hello.
Hello.
Mhm. I know Mr. Bernie is planning to attend. I got an email from him today. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting to order. It is Wednesday, July 22nd. This is the Village of Mamaroneck Planning Board meeting. I hope everybody is well and we're all connected via Zoom. The first item on the agenda is the Planning Board is acknowledging receipt of a draft proposed local law.
Oh, Madam Chair, before you begin, would you just have a roll call just to acknowledge a quorum, please?
Okay, we don't normally do that, but let me introduce our new planning director. That's William Law, who has joined us 2 weeks ago, is it now? Two and a half weeks ago. So he's going to keep us, I guess, in line. So I'm Kathleen Sable. I'm the chair of the planning board. Cindy?
Cindy Goldstein, member of the planning board.
Richard, you have to unmute yourself to speak. Richard, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Like
There's Richard and Mr. Mendez is present.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
4 out of 5 members right now. Mr. Bernie is absent, but I'm sure he will be joining us in a few minutes, but we can continue. Okay, that's very good. We also have staff with us and their names are on the screen. Okay, so we have a draft true law. The Board of Trustees is holding a public hearing on it in the end of September. We will be discussing it at our September 9th meeting. So members of the planning board, you have over a month to read up on it and to gather your thoughts and your comments. For members of the public who might be watching this, I believe the proposed law is posted on the village website and you can find it there. And if you want to comment to the Board of Trustees, they are the appropriate, that's the appropriate venue for you at their public hearing in September.
And Madam Chair, just so you know, staff will also provide some comments to the board about this as well.
Okay,
The planning
okay,
board.
that's great, right. Very good. Well, we'll coordinate. Normally what we do when we are given a proposed local law is the planning board coordinates the comments and we send one set of comments. And if there's some dissension, we send the minority report as well. So we do a majority and a majority, a minority and a majority. We'll see exactly what comes of this. As we were saying before the meeting started, this has been in the works for many years. And we'll see what the law says and we'll comment accordingly. Okay, so we have 2 applications before us tonight. We have 355 Phillips Park Road, the site plan review and special permit public hearing. The public hearing is open. Tonight we have we have a report on some test borings that were taken at the site. And we have an open zoning question. And then if we're all comfortable, perhaps we can close out the environmental environmental review and consider a secret determination and send the applicant back to HCZM in an official way. So is someone here from the applicant want to present the borings report to us? And then Ashley, our consultant from AKRF, one of her colleagues reviewed it, and you can report on your expert review for us as well. So we have for the applicant, Christy Adana.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. It's been a little while since we were last before you. We were last before you on June 10th. And as the chair mentioned at that meeting, the board did request that the applicant go forward with the phase 2 environmental assessment, which was recommended in the phase 1 related to the prior use of the property as a garage for auto and machine repair work. The applicant did do the testing, which consisted of 3 soil boring tests at various locations on the site. And those results concluded that there have been no adverse impacts from the past use of the property and does not recommend additional investigation at this time. There was also a memo from your consultant, AKRF, which stated that nothing in the lab results would challenge the conclusion of the test that we submitted. There were a couple of outstanding items that were raised in that memo. The first was where the soil piles that were in the basement came from. And I have confirmed with my client that, as stated in the memo, the soil piles were indeed related to the geotech work for the new foundation since the old building was staying. So basically, it was just additional engineering tests that was done to make sure that the soil is sufficiently dense to handle the foundation when it's put in. Your consultant had also recommended certain potential conditions on any site plan approval the board were inclined to grant related to removal of the soil and removal of underground storage tanks in the event any are located. However, it should be noted that at this time, we are not aware of any underground storage tanks, and the applicant is fully amenable to those conditions as presented. So and just to also refresh the board's memory, this did come up. We raised this briefly at the June 10th meeting, but we did go before the BAR and they really loved the design. They approved it at their June meeting. So that's done. So as the only outstanding issue with respect to environmental items that the board had raised at the June 10th meeting was the testing, which has been done and the results are favorable, we would ask that the board go forward with issuing a negative declaration on the project this evening. I'm sorry. I apologize. I jumped right in. I also have Robert Stanziel, the architect, Michael Stein from Hudson Engineering, and I think my client was having some technical difficulties, but I apologize for not stating that at the outset.
It's quite all right. Okay. There's John. Ashley, do you have anything that you want to add to Ms. Adana's interpretation of your memo?
No, I would say that she accurately characterized what we stated in our memo, that there was nothing in the lab reports that would challenge the conclusions of their phase 2. We do have a couple conditions of approval that we recommend in the event that something is discovered during construction.
Okay. Does anybody from the board have any questions of the applicant with regards to this report?
I do. I appreciate getting the report. And there's certainly a lot of alphabet soup in here that I had to sort of read several times. But I notice on page 2, there are some references in the second paragraph. For example, concentrations of zinc and lead are below the residential SCO. But then when you're talking about mercury, we're talking about the commercial SCO. And because this is a mixed use building, part residential, part retail, I just didn't know how you evaluate that, if you treat it all as commercial or treat it all as residential or so I just sort of need to understand how that analysis happens.
So I am not as well versed in soil boring tests as unfortunately I would like. My understanding is that the testing that was done with the understanding what the property was going to be used for. The phase 1 was sent to the company that did the tests. So they were aware of what the use of the property was going to be at the time that they were doing the testing. And so that may have had something to do with the reason for the different analysis. But the conclusion does remain the same, that the testing was all at satisfactory levels to not require any further investigation at this time.
No, I understand that. I don't know. I mean, maybe the values of mercury for commercial purposes are different or the same as residential. I'm just wondering, and maybe Ashley, I don't know if you can help me with this. Are there different standards based on the, like maybe it's less of an issue if it's a warehouse versus an apartment. So maybe that's why it's flipping back and forth between commercial and residential.
There are different standards. I can't speak to the details of those standards. I'd have to speak with one of our environmental professionals who reviewed the document and get back to you on that. But I can say that our environmental professional that reviewed the phase 2 was also aware that this building was going to be a residential use building with commercial on the ground floor.
Yeah, because in the third paragraph on page 2, they're talking about all soil sample results were below DEC's soil cleanup objectives for commercial properties, nothing addressing residential. So the flipping back and forth just kind of threw me. So at some point, I'd just like to understand how that works.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Anyone?
Yeah, I have a process question. Isn't it unusual to go to BAR before the planning board approves the site or the environmental review?
Can I speak? I mean, I don't want to interrupt on process. I could just explain what our rationale was. We wanted to go early on in the process in order to get a sense from the BAR as to what they thought of this project and the design, because we have had instances in the past, as this board is aware, that we go through several months of review before the board and then we go to BAR and the design changes. So when we got to the point where we were under the impression that this board was satisfied with the design, we wanted to proactively go to BAR early to ensure that they were also on board so that we didn't get further in the process. If we do have to go back for procedural formality, once the planning board does adopt a negative declaration, we have no problem with that. It was mostly just to get their input, and they didn't really have any changes. So that would be my answer.
So if I may, so basically what happened is the Board of Architectural Review Board provided a recommendation, and essentially that recommendation should have gone from the Board of Architectural Review to you as the planning board. And again, now that you have planning staff in place to help kind of assist with that sort of process, that'll happen. The applicant would then still have to, the applicant must go to the Board of Architectural Review after you issue the, if and after you issue the negative declaration. And again, the Board of Architectural Review cannot approve a project prior to your board either making a positive declaration or a negative declaration.
Just be advised that the Board of Architectural Review has never sent the planning board anything since I've been on the board, and that's 2016.
Fair enough, but again, now that I'm on board, that is one of the things that I will make sure that happens, that there's communication between the boards.
Richard, I think we encourage that. This is John, and welcome.
I remember the problem we had in the past, John, but
Yes.
but it's sort of like putting the cart before the horse also.
Well,
I think the problem is the Board of Architectural Review should not approve or change anything that we've adopted. So even if the process has been modified, we should still control the site.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, you control the site. But again, by the applicant proceeding to the Board of Architectural Review, essentially what happened, and I'm going to speak to it from the formality standpoint, essentially what happened was your board asked the Board of Architectural Review for a recommendation. And what Christy Adana is saying is that the Board of Architectural Review basically stated that overall, they don't foresee any problems or issues or concerns with the design that's been presented to them. That's it.
I don't see a problem with this process because, as everyone has mentioned, we did have problems with another project that this applicant did elsewhere in the village where the BAR changed the design after the planning board had already made its decisions. And so to get them involved early, like we get HCZM involved informally early before the neg deck or the positive deck or whatever, I don't see a problem with it. They'll go back and they'll get the paperwork and then everything will be in order.
Kathy, I don't disagree with you. I just don't want that to happen again, where we make a decision and then there are changes after the decision is made.
Well, I think that that having them involved early on will prevent that from happening again, and we're
But it's
all
not
working
final.
together towards the same endpoint. At least I hope.
Absolutely, and I as staff,
It's not a BAR approval. It's just a recommendation or a review, right?
that's
I
correct.
think they have statutory. I think they have some statutory authority to approve the design of the projects. Just like, you know, if you look at the code of what the BAR does, which is how things got changed on the last time.
So just to be clear on process, are we saying that once the planning board makes their secret determination, the applicant will need to return to BAR?
That's
Well,
what it
I
sounds
don't
like
like
they're
to use
saying.
I don't like to use the word return. The applicant officially did not go to the BAR. What happened was the planning board asked the BAR for a recommendation.
Actually, I don't think
Oh,
we
we
did
did.
do that. No, we didn't.
that.
We did
No,
not do that.
The fact that they went to the BAR, and again, well, either two things happened. Either your board asked the BAR for a recommendation, or
That did not happen.
let me. Or the other thing that happened was the applicant submitted to the BAR, appeared before the BAR, and the BAR has not made a determination because the secret process has not been concluded.
It's
Yes,
been the
that's
practice
where we
that
are.
staff makes the recommendation that an applicant goes to BAR early.
But
That's just been,
even with that being the case, the BAR cannot,
Okay.
from a secret
Okay.
perspective,
This is not
make a decision.
something
So,
right now, as far as this applicant, we can work out the details for how the process should work in the village of Mamaroneck. You know, in another venue, we don't have to do it at the planning board meeting. It happened here. I don't think it's a terrible thing. William is correct. We'll have to go back after the neg deck and we'll just do it one step at a time, okay? So
Agreed.
we're on the environmental issues then, and does anybody have any other questions on the borings report, or how are people feeling given the issue that Cindy raised with regards to the different levels of testing being done, some commercial and some residential? Are people uncomfortable with moving forward, comfortable with moving forward? Let me take your temperature here.
Kathy, can we hear from the consulting engineer, Brian, about that?
They didn't do the borings report. Another company did it.
But they looked at it, no?
AKRF looked at it
We defer to AKRF.
for us.
Have more
AKRF.
environmentally geared staff.
I see. And their review was satisfactory?
Yes.
you should have that memo in the Google.
Yeah, we have it. We have it. It was in the package. It was in the package we got. Plus, we discussed it, both Ms. Adana and Ashley raised it. We discussed it already here at this meeting.
Okay.
Cindy, you raised this. How do you feel?
I'm okay with it. I just wanted to understand. I assume there are different standards, but if our independent consultant has verified that it's satisfactory, I can accept that. I just wanted to know how to move forward, just so for my own understanding. So I'm okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So just one look, these testings, I mean, the tests usually get mercury, zinc. You can test 100 sites and you have these types of reports. I mean, at the end of the day, the site gets encapsulated with a slab and everything is, but I think Cindy makes a good point. I'm just trying to understand what the process is and how would that process will take place. But I feel the report is basically normal because every single site that you will test, you will find mercury and zinc, and that's still. But if you want to find what what the process is, I think it's something that we should all be aware of. But as far as report itself, I don't think I see any problems with what the report shows, because it's basically your typical normal report of what's found in soil every time you test it.
I think we were particularly sensitive because it was on the riverbank. I mean,
And I totally understand your request. I'm just trying to say that what the report, the content of the report, is it serious or not, as far as understanding what the process is going to be between commercial and residential. I agree with you, Cindy, that we should know what that process is.
Okay, so are we comfortable going forward with the neg deck for this application?
I'm not.
Okay, what's your issue?
There's a couple of issues.
You want to talk about the zoning first?
Yeah, all right.
Is that it?
All right, that's my big issue. There was another issue of conflicting parts of the village code, which you were going to research. So you want to do zoning first?
Well, that's really what we're talking about. There's two different parts of the code that apply here. We do have a memo and Christy, you're going to have to remind me, did we release this? I think we voted to release the confidentiality on this memo because we've discussed it already, or no?
You're muted,
This is
Christy.
your memo. This is your memo of June 8th on this issue.
I just can't remember if it was this one or a different one because I've had a few with you recently. I think it was this one.
Well, I can entertain a motion now to release the confidentiality on this memo so we can discuss it at this public meeting. This is Ms. Mace's memo of June 8th, talking about the difference of the village code 240-30, which is the management of the coastal zone, and 242-50B5, which is residences in the C district and the transit overlay district, and how it applies to this particular project, how they both apply to this particular project. So do I have a motion to release the confidentiality of this memo, just in case we didn't do it before?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I don't think we need a voice vote for this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Okay. So, Ms. Mason, would you like to explain what the issue is here? We can sort of remind everyone that there's an existing building that's on this property. That building is not code compliant with the existing code. It's within 50 feet of the river. Is that correct? But the second floor, which is what we're here to discuss, the second floor being put on this building, is set back and will not be within 50 feet of the river. And that is the issue.
So if I remember correctly, the parking area is the area that currently is within 50 feet from the mean high water line. The river body, the Mamaroneck River, Frank, do you remember? I can't remember. It is, Ashley? Okay. And that flows into the Long Island Sound. And so there is a portion of the code, Village Code 240-30, that essentially requires you to get a permit from the planning board if you're doing any type of alteration, building, enlargement, enclosure within 50 feet from the mean high water line of any body of water that flows in the Long Island Sound. So that's applicable here. That's one portion of the code. There are exceptions. One is that if you're a water dependent structure, or two, if that portion of the property can't be located elsewhere on the property. That's 240-30, but there is another portion of the code that in a sense somewhat conflicts, I guess you could call it conflicting with 240-30, and that's Village Code 342-50B5, which essentially takes away that exception that if you can't build it elsewhere, the planning board will issue that permit. So it says the development may not contain a building structure or parking area within 50 feet from the mean high water line of Long Island Sound or any body of water which flows into the Long Island Sound. And the planning board may not grant a permit for such a building structure or parking area under section 240-30 of this code for development under this section unless the building structure or parking area is water dependent, as that term is defined in section 240-30. So like I said, it takes away that exemption that would essentially allow you to build there if you couldn't do it elsewhere. And so we presented a memo on this, just sort of explaining those two provisions of the code. That 342-50, because it's was enacted later, is the controlling provision. And so we didn't assess this property we didn't go into how the codes apply to this property. We sort of just gave an overview of it. And our reading of it was essentially that no recourse at this time exists, like I said, unless it's a water dependent structure.
Well, when we began this process with this application, we had a determination from the building inspector that the project was zoning compliant.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've asked Frank Tavolacci to be here tonight to explain to this board his thought process that was behind that determination. And he is the chief zoning officer of the village of Mamaroneck. And so that's why he's here with us tonight. And Frank, I hope you can explain it in a way that people can understand this. So, because it is confusing to us. So when you looked at this application and before it even came to us and you determined it was zoning compliant, could you just tell us what you were thinking?
So initially, the determination was made along with Greg Cutler. We looked at it together. And basically, we were thinking and talking only about new construction on that building, not the existing structure. So the alteration to that building is out of the 50-foot setback. And that's basically the reason that I found it to be zoning compliant.
Okay.
Kathy, may
Yes.
I give my interpretation?
You may.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think that's the correct decision, because when you make zoning determinations, you have to consider the whole lot, whether you're dealing with a tax lot or a zoning lot. That's the application. The application isn't to develop half the lot. The application is for the entire lot, which puts it in violation of the zoning. So I don't know how this could be approved. That's my objection. And I've only been doing zoning for 45 or 50 years, and this decision doesn't make any sense.
Well, the beginning of that code section starts with the development may not contain a building structure or parking area. So I think we have to look at the entire building, not
The
just the part
development is the entire lot. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's basic planning.
Well, and this is the more recent law. So as Christy explained, this is, I mean, I'm guessing it's probably an oversight when they did this legislation, that they hamstrung anything, or maybe this is what they wanted to do, but I think it's a massive restriction.
So what Richard, what you and Cindy are saying basically is that nothing can now be done on that lot because the existing building is within the 50 feet of the river.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? It has to
Yes.
stay exactly as it is.
No, that's not my interpretation. I think if you took down the building and pulled out of the 50-foot buffer area, you could redevelop the rest of the property depending on other constraints. But as long as no part of the redeveloped building is within the 50 feet, you could do something with the property. But I need help here. I need some guidance, probably legal.
Or maybe, I
I'm-
don't know, maybe the ZBA needs to interpret
So
the conflict here, give
So
us guidance.
I would agree that I don't think it's necessarily my place to interpret it. I've like I said, I've given an overview of it, and Frank is here, like we said, to just sort of clarify what he was looking for. But he was the one that ultimately made the determination, and if the planning board is uncomfortable with the determination, the route is to appeal to the ZBA. We had discussed last time. Well, not I think it was 2 meetings ago that we discussed this. I initially said there might be an issue with appealing to the ZBA. The planning board appealing to them. I think at the last meeting we discussed that you actually are able to.
Yeah.
The only issue here is that you should appeal within that 62-day time frame of when that determination was made, which I think we're very far out from that 62-day time frame.
Right.
So,
Well, before we continue, I mean, we've heard from 2 members of the planning board. There are 3 other people. Lou and John, how do you feel about this? Are you uncomfortable about moving forward with Frank's decision on zoning compliance? Or do you want to send this to ZBA for an interpretation?
I want to ask you a question. Go ahead, Lou.
Hello, Greg. I'm comfortable with Frank's decision. I mean, or else, so what's the outcome of this? The site is going to sit there and die a slow death, because we can't touch it. If you guys feel more comfortable with the zoning board making a variance decision, then, but I think it's an existing condition. This should be grandfathered into an approval, because or else you can't really do anything with the site. I mean, we're trying to do an improvement here, and not to keep the site the way it is. So, I mean, for us to just take a strong stand on something like this that really does not bring any benefit to the village, I don't see it. I think Frank made the right call.
Yeah, Lou, I just want to make it clear. I'm not opposed to this project. It's probably a very good project, but it's got to be done properly. We got to touch all the bases.
But you keep saying it has to be done properly, as if some.
Uh-oh, I think he froze. Okay, well, he's frozen.
Does it, Kathy,
John, do you want to go in?
Yeah, does it matter if there's a change of use and whether the existing building is a prior use that's conforming or even a pre-existing nonconformity under its present use and something's being added to it? Because to take a building that's a warehouse and then turn it into housing.
Definitely a change of use.
What's that?
Definitely a change of use.
So if it's a change of use, then to say, well, this part's existing, but the new part is different, I think that's a different equation.
That would be a question for our attorney. I don't know if there's any provision in the code for a change of use and looking at the new use differently than the old use. That would be a question for Christy. Our Christy.
Thank you. It's not something I know off the top of my head. I'd have to go look and see what the provisions code state about it. Frank, I don't know if you're able to comment on if you have any idea, but it's something that I'd have to look up.
Just the fact that the application was for the construction out of the 50-foot setback. That's what I'm basing my decision on.
Right.
The original structure is within that, but what they're proposing is construction out of the 50-foot setback.
But it's all on the same lot, governed by the same zoning with the same.
Okay. Lou, you froze and I'm not sure you were finished because we lost you for a while. You kind of just froze there. Do you have anything that you want to add? You're muted. You have to turn your sound on. Or Ashley maybe, or William, maybe you can turn on Lou's. Okay. All right, Lou. Do you have anything you want to add to what you said before? Because we lost you because you froze.
This application was made through construction. So as the new application, I mean, you got to judge this per the new application, not what it's an existing structure. The existing structure should be grandfathered, and the same issue that will never change. But what took place here is the filing of the new application for. That's what we are judging here. Richard said, "Well, now put the whole thing in the same envelope." Well, I mean that means nothing will to be done there.
John, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think that cities and villages need to evolve, and so I don't have a problem with a new use, as long as that new use doesn't swallow up the intent of what the buffer was for. So this is allowed to be built by the code because the development is an allowable use within the buffer area, but the pre-existing building is not being moved. Is that correct?
The pre-existing building is not being moved. It's being gutted and the interior is being worked on and changed, but nothing, the actual footprint of the building is not moving.
And if the footprint of the building were moved, there'd be nothing left of that parcel to build on. If that existing building was 50 feet away from the river, what would be left to build there?
That's the point, Frank. It's one parcel.
Well,
It's all one parcel. The unbuildable half and the buildable half are the same piece.
so you're suggesting that the existing building should be, or the proposed building should be moved 50 feet away from the river?
No. I'm saying that there needs to be some kind of a variance to make the building compliant. As things stand now, in my professional opinion, it can't be built without violating the law.
Nice.
Okay, so do I actually have two people who don't want to move forward with this and want to send it to ZBA, and two people who do want to move forward with this? And I get the enviable job of breaking the tie? Is that where we stand?
Madam Chair, if I may just quickly, is the board is the lead agency as it relates to this project. And regardless of whether or not however the determination of the zoning board, in terms of its interpretation, will that have an impact on your ability to to reach a determination of significance as it relates to secret?
I don't think so.
So then the question is, does the board want to continue moving forward with trying to resolve the secret issue and send it to the zoning board? It's just a question. I don't know.
Can I,
Okay.
Chair, can I address the board, please?
Yes, please.
So I just want to remind the board about the discussion that we had back in June, and it was that you were going to ask the building inspector to come to the meeting. He's here. You were going to listen to what he has to say, and that was going to be it. You're beyond the 62 days from when the determination was made to go to the zoning board. And I just have to remind you again of the prejudice to the applicant in this project from this coming up now. The code 34250 speaks to residential uses. The residential portion is outside of the 50 feet. So that is what we designed specifically for this purpose. With respect to Mr. Littman's comment about you have to look at the whole property. Okay, well then the whole property is legal non-conforming because it predates this code provision. So either way you look at it, this can be done, and it should be allowed to be done because it's gone this far. It's a good project. To even suggest demolishing the portion of the building that's in the setback would be, I would think, much more harmful than just interior renovations to improve it and make it more appealing to the community. And so I would really implore this board to not go that route of sending this to the zoning board. It should not be going there. The building inspector made his determination. He made it months ago, and he's reaffirmed it. And so to send it there now would be incredibly prejudicial.
So my question with that though, and I understand completely what you're saying, Ms. Adana, about the time frame and everything else. I see though that section 342-50B5 prevents us from granting a permit. I mean, it's not just, it's a discretionary thing. It says we may not grant a permit for a building structure or parking area. I mean, it seems to me like it applies to the whole building. So I am just concerned about this board granting a permit that it is legally not entitled to do. So we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place as well. And we're trying to grasp on to something that allows us to move forward on this. But
And respectfully, Mr. Tavolacci has given you that something. He's given you his interpretation as the building inspector and the zoning enforcement officer. He is saying that the way he interprets the code is what is being constructed, is outside of the 50-foot setback, and therefore it is allowed. And so that's your avenue. That's the procedure. That's how it goes.
yeah, it's just the language in the beginning of that sentence is very clear. Can't in a building. If you were just putting in a parking structure on another part of the property, I think we still have an issue because this is so broad. This code section is so building, structure, parking area. It's like, anything other than landscaping, but it ties our hands. And I don't think this is what they meant. So I'm wrestling with that.
I completely understand.
Okay.
Isn't it a question, Kathy, isn't it a question for the village board? Because the village board was one that put this code section about the 50-foot buffer. So it's
Well,
really
at this point in time, any appeal of the zoning code goes to the zoning board of appeals. That's the way our codes are written. But I want to just basically wrap this up right now. We have 5 members of the planning board here. We've had a lot of discussion. I want to call for a vote of whether people want to proceed with this and go ahead and then move into the secret findings. So yes, Ashley.
There is a participant who would like to ask a question, a Glenn.
Okay, we are having a public hearing. So hi, Glenn. You're
now unmuted.
Glenn Tippett, 506 Hill Street. I actually watched when the law was put in place, and the problem that you have is that unfortunately the 50-foot clause was added at the last minute without any research, and there's no ambiguity about it. It is a straight 50 feet, no development. The board is aware of this. The board knows that they have to fix this. I would say that your planning board ought to write them a letter stating what your problems with it is. But the way they wrote it, there was no clauses, no exceptions, no appeals. They put this in. It was done at the last minute, and that's the dilemma that you're caught in. The trustees did a very poor job of designing this, but there's no ambiguity about it. It says 50 feet, no development within the 50 feet with the regulations they put on. And the way they wrote it is that there was no way to appeal it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Glenn. Okay.
Madam Chair, what if we took Mr. Long's decision and moved ahead on SECRA? I don't want to keep kicking this can down the road, but
neither do I, frankly. Yeah, I don't see a resolution here. I see both sides. I see both sides of the issue. I mean, textbook planning, and this, I don't mean any disrespect by this. Sometimes we have to look at the reality of the situation. So here we have a parcel of land where the building that's sitting on it right now is legal non-conforming. That's the correct legal term, I think. I just stole that from Ms. Adana. Okay, so that's legal non-conforming. They want to put a second floor on. The second floor is not going to pierce the 50-foot buffer. But the way the code is written, it's so strict. Basically, the 350, what is it?
B5.
34250B5 is written so strict, nothing can happen if anything on the site is within the 50-foot buffer. And right now, the existing building is within the 50-foot buffer. I'm kind of leaning with John. And the way John is interpreting this and Frank is interpreting this, And so I want to call a vote of the 5 members of the planning board to sort of put this to bed, say we're going to move forward with this, and then we'll have a vote on the secret determination. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
And we just put it to bed. Okay. I need a motion then to
Close the
vote on whether, well, we don't close the hearing until we do the permit. They have to go to HCZM, and we're way away from that. But that the planning board will proceed with this application as we have it in front of us. We will accept Frank, the building inspector's zoning determination, as he is I call him the chief zoning officer. I think Mrs. Donnie is a different term, but you get the gist of it. And we're moving forward, and then we will talk about secret after this. Is that good with everybody? So can I have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion that we proceed in that manner, Kathy, that we move forward with, move past this and move forward to a secret determination.
Okay, do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, let's have a voice vote. Cindy?
No.
Richard?
No.
Lou?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion carries. Okay. Now we can do secret. Everybody's comfortable with what we're doing and we're going forward? Okay. Okay, so we have before us the part 2 of the short environmental assessment form, which is now being put on the screen. And we can just go through these 11 questions with regards to the information that we have had in front of us for the past, how many months have we been looking at this now? 4 months, and here we are. Okay. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? It's either no, or a small impact may occur, or a moderate to large impact may occur. And I think we have some people that would say it's a large impact, and some people that would say it's a small impact.
Moderate is a fair way to put it.
Do other people feel, I mean, this is one aspect. We'd have to have much more, I think, to pause deck this than one aspect, moderate, but how are people?
I don't see that it's a material conflict with the land use plan. I think our code is a problem, but.
Okay, all right.
I agree, Cindy. Yeah.
Okay, and I agree also.
Yep.
Lou?
Yes, I agree with Cindy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to say no.
Right.
Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use in the land?
It's a pre-existing non-conforming building. It's there.
Right.
It's there.
Right. There is a change in the use of, well, the land is there. I mean, it's a change in the use of the building, not really the land.
Well, you're putting more people there.
Well, it is.
It's a
You put
small
it-
impact.
2 stories.
It's a small impact. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? I say no.
No.
No. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? There is no critical environmental area there.
Mhm.
Will an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect the existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? We have a traffic study that says no.
No.
Everybody good? Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation and renewable energy opportunities? No.
No.
Will the proposed action impact existing public water supply? No.
No.
Public wastewater treatment utilities? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? I think we all say no.
No.
Will the proposed action result, if anybody disagrees with me, speak up. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources? That is wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora and fauna? No.
No.
Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No.
Nope.
Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health?
No.
No. Okay. So everything is a no. So I guess we need a motion to find a negative declaration on this application?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, let's vote. Richard,
No,
Cindy,
Yes.
John,
yes.
Lou,
Yes,
and I vote yes. Okay, that's what we wanted to accomplish tonight, I believe. Thank you, Frank, for attending. And you have your neg deck, and Ms. Donna, you and your team can move on to HCZM officially.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all your time this evening. We all do.
And I hope everybody appreciates how much work this board puts into every application.
Absolutely.
You don't have to appreciate it, Chris, because you're the applicant. And I'm sure you're like, oh, really? But it's fun. All right, we're good until you guys have to come back after you see HCZN.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
All right, all right, have a good
Oh,
evening.
Madam Chair, just for the record, and since Christy Yanana is still on the line, also the applicant would have to make his way, would have to appear before the Board of Architectural Review, not
Right.
a negative declaration.
Right.
Absolutely understood. We will take care of that.
Okay, very
Thank you
good.
very much.
Okay, we have an application for a subdivision before us at 886-888 Orienta Avenue. We have a request for a lot line adjustment, and it requires a public hearing. So before we begin a discussion of this project, I need a motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
Kathy, before you take that motion, I sent you an email this
Yes,
evening
go right ahead.
that having looked at the map concerning this application, the application concerns a parcel that's in close proximity to my brother's house. And so I'm going to recuse myself from this matter, as it wouldn't be proper for me to hear it for any possible conflicts that might arise.
Okay.
So could John leave the meeting? Since
John can, yes, John can leave the meeting. I think he just wanted to get out a little early.
So I bid adieu on this application, and as I'm recused on the next matter you'll be discussing on Hampshire, recused on that as well. I bid adieu for the evening, and also bid adieu to Betty Ann, who I know is moving on from serving us on the planning board. So want to thank you for your service to our planning board, and we're going to miss you, Betty Ann.
thank you very much, John.
And I say goodnight. I say goodnight for the night.
And we'll see you in September.
See you in September. Have a
Don't
good
sing.
good rest of the evening.
Okay, all right, bye. Okay, so at least four of us now, we still have a quorum, so I need a motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
Second,
second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is now open. This applicant has been before this board prior, I think it was in 2018. I'm guessing that's when it was, because I do believe we did get the resolution sent to us from the last time they were here. And so we need to sort of understand this application. What we're asked to do now, it was a little difficult for me anyway, because all I have with me right now is my laptop. So to try to read the plans on my laptop were a little difficult, and I was getting confused with lot 1, lot 2, the existing lot where the house is that lot 1? Or I'm a little confused. So I'm asking, is this Mr. Weckstein? You're here for the applicant?
Yes, it is.
I welcome. Please walk us through this. I'll borrow a line from an old boss of mine. Talk to us like we're 4 years old. So you explain it very clearly. And tell us sort of where we were, where we are, and where you want to go. How's that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just for the record, I'm Adam Weckstein from Hockerman, Tortorella and Weckstein, and I represent the applicants Ian and Jessica Sigalo, who own 886 Orienta Avenue. This application actually involves the transfer, and I'll put up the map in a minute, of a portion of the lot, the rear portion at 88 Orienta, which is owned by an entity known as Orient Point 888 LLC, who I do not represent, but we do have an authorization that's before you. The previous lot line change, and can I hopefully accomplish a share screen? If I can find it. Hopefully it's there. Do I need a permission to share?
I've given you permission to share.
Oh, wow. My ineptitude didn't get in the way that time.
There you go. Okay, this is where I couldn't understand this.
Okay, so what is happening here? Number one, the portion at the bottom of the screen is east of our lot. So this, I didn't do that well.
All right. Yes, we're getting some feedback. Okay, that's better. Okay.
Trying to get the, I cannot find the map right now. I don't know if you have it there, Ashley or Bill.
If you prefer, I can share my screen with the same plan.
I just need the subdivision map. I'm sorry.
Hold on a second.
Let me see if it's here still. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So the area to the bottom of the screen, if you're to draw a line, is owned by 888 Orienta Point. The area to the top of the screen, the rectangle, is owned by Ian and Jessica Sigalo.
Is there any way you can show us where the property line is right now?
Yeah, the property line right now goes along here.
Okay, so it basically goes right across the middle of what we're looking at. Okay.
And this area back here, this whole area back here, is being conveyed and combined with the Sigalo lot. So that.
But so they're keeping the lot that's fronted on the street.
Correct. This lot, 888 Orienta Point, is keeping that lot, which is a little in excess of, I guess it's about 23,000 square feet. This is an R20 zone. So what will happen is the rectangular area in the back that's labeled as proposed lot 2 will be combined with the Sigalo lot, and together they will become the new lot 2. Okay,
so we're basically creating a flag lot.
It will be, it's an odd shaped lot. I wouldn't necessarily call it a flag lot. It's not a thin access strip providing access to a house. Just to keep in perspective what was done last time, previously to the area to the top of the screen is the Westchester Religious School, and a small strip of that, there was a lot line change, and I believe you're right. I think the plat was filed in 2018. I think it was before your board in 2017, late 2017. You granted a lot line change, so a relatively small strip was conveyed from the Westchester Day School to the Sigalos. So what we are proposing, again, is to effectively eliminate the lot line at the back, which is to the north, and merge those areas together. It's taking a 0.45 acre area, 0.452 acre area, incorporating it into the Sigalo lot, and taking it out of what currently is tax lot 9100 lot 1, which is 888 Orienta. And both lots, at the end of the day, will remain conforming with the zoning code in all respects. We are not, as part of this application, proposing to build anything, to take physical action on the site. The area that's being conveyed, presumably in the future, could be used for some sort of accessory structure or building, although I don't see how it would be used for any kind of additional residence, for example. But there are no plans now to do that. And the tax lot that would be left at 888 is currently unimproved. I suspect, or I believe at some point in the future, it will be improved with a single family home, but that process has not started yet. And I'm not the one to speak to that. That would be Lucia Yocchio, and I always butcher her name. I apologize. If you want to hear from her, I know she's on and represents the owners of 888.
All right, let's stick with the owners for 886 right now.
I'm for the owners of 886.
Right. Let's stick with before we start talking to other people. So the proposed lot 2, which is at the bottom of the screen now, will be a full buildable lot, but it's being annexed to the existing lot at 886. Or will it be a separate lot?
No, it will be part of the lot at 886. It'll be a single lot. It's not large enough to be buildable, but more importantly than that, it doesn't have frontage. I mean, you cannot get a house there. I guess theoretically you could knock down the brand new multi-million-dollar house and try to figure out some funky way to put a subdivision in, but that's not the plan, and it's not realistic.
Okay.
With this configuration.
Okay, so we're enlarging the property. So that will be all incorporated into one parcel.
That's correct.
All right, that's what I needed to understand. Okay.
It will not remain separate.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you if you want to keep going. I just wanted to stay with you.
So the other two aspects of this I just wanted to briefly mention from a procedural perspective is, number one, this is a type 2 action under SECRA as it was amended starting in 2019. The provision I cited in my letter, which used to only talk about individual lot line variances, added the words and adjustments. And it's very clear from both the the finding SECRA did and the SECRA handbook that that's specifically intended for this kind of lot line adjustment, whether or not in a specific municipality subdivision approval is needed, as it is. And then number two, we don't believe any sort of waterfront consistency determination is needed from the HCZMC. It's not any kind of physical action or activity that could affect the environment that we're approving, which is what the definition in the code is. So without going too much further, we hope that you'll see this as something that's very simple. It's just moving a lot line. It's certainly not creating the ability to put in any more residences. It's not at this point associated with any sort of development work or disturbance. And really it's for the purposes of the conveyance.
Okay, does anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Wexstein?
I do have a few related to stormwater. It looks like, obviously, the property that's built, your client's property, had to take care of stormwater. I would like to see some kind of as-built in terms of where the stormwater practices are. I wasn't on the planning board when this came through, so I don't really know anything about this, but I'm sure that paperwork is available somewhere at the village. And then I see on the letter for 888, they do have certain permits, including, it looks like, a SWIP. And again, I think we should just see that, because even though this is a fairly straightforward lot line moving, there are requirements in the code to basically that we know we have to follow to understand stormwater, because obviously that can be impacted by the moving of a lot line. And we have no contours, we have no, there's nothing on here that I could see that deals with anything dealing with stormwater.
Well, we're not proposing any improvements. I'll let you speak to the owner of 888 as to the outstanding permits, but we're not changing anything. We did have stormwater management plans approved. We did get building permit, we did get a CO. We're not doing anything physically on the property it's hard for me to understand why that should be a subject of a review. There are certain instances, obviously, where a lot line change can, if it's coupled with some kind of change on the ground, affect stormwater management. But here, I don't believe anything we're doing has that impact. And I do believe it was approved almost 3 years ago.
That may be true, but we have code section 58-4 that talks about approval of plats with lot line changes, and we have to have assurances it can be adequately drained. And it sounds like that data is readily available. Both your client has it, obviously, because as you said, they built their house and they had to prepare a SWIP. And it looks like, you know, for 888, that's also been approved. So I'm thinking it's not hard to get copies of that information. I know from driving by that site that it is very low lying, and adjacent properties, their lawns, backyards are underwater after heavy rain. So I just want to dot my I's and cross my T's.
Well, I think it's a good idea, especially if 888 has approved permits and an approved SWIP. Was the SWIP prepared thinking that the lot was the entire lot? So if the stormwater management plan incorporated the entire property, it has to be changed if the property changes. So it may not affect what was done at 886, but it certainly may affect anything that was approved and any permits that are open and for 888. So maybe now it's time to add the owner's representative for 888 to the mix here. And I don't know if Frank, I'm sure you don't have everything that is in front of you memorized. You probably weren't prepared to discuss this, Frank Tavolacci. Or even, I don't know, Brian, if you were involved in the review of anything for 888 Orienta, but I think it's a very fair question, because if that property line is changing, it could very well change the SWIP for that property.
Right.
So we have another representative to join us from the other.
Good evening, Chairwoman and members of the Planning Board. My name is Lucia Chiocchio. I'm with Cuddy and Fader, and we represent the owners of 888 Orienta. And we do have a permit for SWIP, as you know, and we're happy to provide a copy of it. And if this subdivision is approved and the land is conveyed to our neighbors to the north, we would seek an amendment to that SWIP to account for the different size property. So that would be something we would need to do in the future.
Okay, but that doesn't come before the planning board then, because it's a single family house on one lot, and that would just go before the building inspector. So I guess this is a question for our attorney, given that the applicant's neighbor, the seller of the property, is aware that they would need to revise their SWIP. Is there anything before that the planning board needs to do at this point in time? And maybe Ashley or William, you could also weigh in on this question.
Not that I can think of, but I'm happy to hear from them as well.
And no, there's nothing else from that standpoint. I do have a question for the applicant, Madam Chair. The applicant mentioned that they're moving this lot line with no intentions of selling the property for, to be built as residential into the future. And I was wondering if the board so desires, would the applicant be willing, if the board were to approve it, would the board be willing to put that in as a restrictive covenant?
Well, it would certainly be something. I mean, the lot would be landlocked. There's no frontage to any street to access it to put a house on it.
Well, I mean, the applicant could essentially apply for a variance and go through the process of trying to subdivide the lot if the lot were created and had enough, frontage,
right.
had enough lot area.
Well, that would certainly be.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
You
that I'm just
obviously have to
saying,
come back to your board. I don't think you would have to grant a subdivision. That property can't be conveyed without.
right.
But, well,
Right.
what if you just wanted to have an accessory building, a studio or an extra, I don't know, storage? You could build something on that property and keep it under the title and control of the owner of the main house, right?
Correct. That is absolutely correct.
Okay. So it, I mean, it has
The
value.
aviary, we're not, it probably will have some sort of accessory structure at some point in the future.
Could it be even something like a guest house?
I don't think a guest house is permitted in this zone.
Okay. That's why I'm asking.
No, I don't believe there are any outbuildings in the R20 zone that can be used for residential purposes.
Well, you know, people nowadays are buying these sort of prefab units to have their home office, you know, just steps away from their home. So I think it's going to be creative planning coming with the whole, you know, requirement of working from home during pandemics anyway.
I mean, your home office provisions say that no more than 30% of the building can be used for that. It's restricted to the occupant of the building. You know, I haven't seen whether it's ever applied to an outbuilding. I don't think that's the intent. I think the intent is you can do it in the main building, but I won't.
Well, and again,
I make that statement.
I'm not so concerned about all those potential uses. I'm concerned about plain old stormwater issues for what we're looking at now. And again, I think the site is problematic. I don't know if it must be groundwater. We're not, you know, it's not close to the sound or a river. So I'm interested in seeing, you know, even though it would have to be amended, you know, the paperwork's done, you know, somebody's paid for the engineering. So it's just a question of this board reviewing it. I'm in favor of that.
I would be in favor of that as well. Just have someone advise us on the conditions of the site. But I'm not really sure we have the legal authority to request that.
Well, we, again, 58-4, and we've used this with other subdivisions, you know, even when they had no permits, they were not anticipating development at any point, but we did ask them to, you know, tell us how they handled their stormwater. They ended up doing a SWIP, which was fine, but it seems to me that that's all. We're not asking anybody to incur any additional expense or any trouble. I think it's just a question of having a complete record for us to review. I need to be sure that, you know, even if they would have to amend the SWIP for 888, that, right, you know, you can't always handle your stormwater. So effectively, I just need to know that they can handle their stormwater.
So you're talking about 888?
Well, yes. I mean, they're the ones that are losing. That's the property.
They're losing, right? They're losing the back
losing
of the
back end of the property, and,
which could be used to manage the stormwater.
Well, may have to be used to manage the stormwater, because when I look at the elevations, the stormwater from this site is actually being piped up. There's a pump pumping it across Orienta Avenue to a higher elevation than where it started. So it seems problematic to me. The red lights are flashing that stormwater is not so simple on this site, either of these sites. The one has solved it. The other one, we don't know. So before we, you know, cut off that avenue for the future development of 888, I think we just need to have the paperwork.
I think it's fair. I mean, the SWIP exists. We would just have to have a consultant review it for us and give us their opinion vis-a-vis what the 886 applicant is asking us to approve. Does that make sense?
I mean, we really need the as-built for 886, and we need the SWIP for 888. And the consultant would need to tell us that 888 could handle stormwater without that very large chunk of property in the back. I guess that's.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. How do other members of the planning board feel about that?
I agree.
May I heard on one thing?
All right.
So I
We can't
understand.
see everybody on the screen, so you'll have to kind of tell us who's talking.
Oh, go ahead. I'll let you talk. My only question is, if they don't know what the house size is, all you're going to see is the SWIP that's already designed. They're going to have to come back when they come in with a proposal for a house. And I shouldn't speak for 888, but I certainly think you could make it clear in your resolution of approval that they have to get a new SWIP approved when they come in with a house.
We did, oh, thank you. Now we can see everybody. We did have an application like this not that long ago where we were approving a subdivision that had no plans to build on it now. And they did sort of this is the house that would fit and this is where it would go, SWIP. So if they did a SWIP for 888, there must be something that they used for an assumption of what would be there. So we would just need to see it and we would ask one of our engineering consultant to review it for us and make sure that 888 could lose the back half of the lot. Basically, I think that's what we're asking. I think that's a reasonable and
and from us, you would want the as-built to the extent we have to see what.
Correct. Correct. So everything can be reviewed and I don't know how, I mean, this would be open land at this point in time for 886 if we were to do this, if everybody was to do this. So how is stormwater on open land managed? I think it just, you know, somebody would have to explain that to me. Is that an issue?
I'm sure that there has to be an as-built survey or the C of O would never have been issued. So again, I think it's just paperwork.
Right.
It may be that we have the plans and then the C of O. I have no idea whether there would be an as-built of the stormwater, but we'll get you what's on file.
Right.
With the village.
Okay.
I was able to locate the SWIP. So the SWIP has been circulated to the board members. I'm in the process of trying to go through the building department file to locate the as-built for 886.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those of us who were on the planning board 2 years ago, we don't keep our files. so that's why we don't have some of this stuff. We may have had it at the time, but we get a lot. We used to get a lot of paper. Now we don't get any paper. So you know,
I have it, but I couldn't tell you it was the final.
Right. Okay. All right. So that sounds good. Now on the agenda today, we could type it. Because it is a private house, so we could type it, and because we open the public hearing, we also could once we do that, or even maybe before we do that, open it for public comment if anyone has any comments. So actually, before we type it for secret, why don't we see if there's any member of the public who has any comments about this application at this point in time? Nobody? Not even Glenn? Okay.
He
All right.
changed the channel.
No, he's kind of still there on the screen. Okay, so anybody have any problem with this being a type 2 as it is a private house?
I don't. I guess I'm wondering why we probably don't have to rush it because it's not going to HCZMC. That seems to be the consensus. I mean, we could, but I don't think it's holding anything up if we don't.
No, it's not holding anything up. We're just crossing it off the list of things to do.
You want to cross it off the list. I understand.
It's my type A personality. What can I say? All right. So do I have a motion to type this application as a type 2 under the secret law?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Let's do a voice vote. Cindy?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
And I say yes, and John Verney is recused from this. Okay, is there anything else we can do on this application tonight? Is everybody good? We have to go into executive session.
I just want to thank you for your courtesy. I appreciate the time and the thought, and I just heard about Betty Ann tonight for the first time. She is a great resource for the town. She was always wonderful to work with. My opinion may not matter, but I deal with lots of board administrative staff all over the county and north. She was great. She is great. I am not implying you're going anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weckstein.
Okay.
I'd like to echo Adam's comments about the board's time and about Betty. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay, so I need a motion for us to go into executive session, and we all have a phone number to call in so that we can discuss a matter of pending litigation, New Hampshire Recreation LLC versus the Planning Board, in accordance with Public Officers Law, Section 105, subsection 1D. Do I have a motion?
I have a question first. We have to come back into a public session to close the meeting. So how do we deal with the electronics?
Part of your executive session.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Long is also a co-host on the meeting, and he's going to be in your executive session.
Okay, very good.
You underestimate us, Cindy. We took care of that.
Just checking, just checking.
Yeah, joining as well to help with that, or is that?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. Can we?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, that's it better.
Betty Ann, will you be joining as well to do minutes, or will Mr. Long be handling that?
Chair?
I think usually the planning director handles it. We will be taking a vote. I believe that's all our minutes have to reflect. So that's simple enough to do. Somebody can do it. Yeah. But Betty Ann, you're not leaving us yet, right? Will you be back? Will you be here, or are you going to leave us? We want to say goodbye.
Oh, thank you. I'll stay on until you adjourn the meeting.
All right. Yeah. I don't think we're going to be long. Is Mr. Sposino joining us?
Will be. I have to call him now to have him hop on. I just want to make sure that I know I'm reiterating it, but that William will then be handling the minutes. Or so.
Is Betty Ann going to be participating in the?
Usually not. Usually not.
All right. Okay.
So it's really just supporting a vote, but it should be village staff.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
you. Do we have the motion?
Okay, so we need a motion to go into executive sessions, moved by Richard. We need a second. Cindy, you're muted.
Sorry, I did second.
Okay, all those in favor of going into executive session?
Aye.
Aye. All right, for those of you watching, we're going into executive session and we will be back. And for those of you going into executive session, you have a phone number that you received in the email.
Please make sure you mute.
You are the first participant in the conference.
Someone is unmuted and everyone needs to be muted.
Richard, please mute.
Hey, Betty Ann?
Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this your last planning? Yeah, it's your last planning board meeting, huh? No.
My last planning board meeting. Now I just have to make it through zoning board.
Oh my God. Well.
Okay, we're back on. We're back on LMC TV. Somebody has to let us start our videos.
Betty Ann?
You should be able to.
The host has stopped it.
We're blocked.
We're blocked.
Okay.
We're blocked.
Okay.
There we go. Okay.
We're starting to arrive. Lou, can you start your video?
I can't. I mean, I'm trying to, but it's not letting me in.
I know.
Okay.
It wouldn't let me just do it once for everyone. I had to do it individually.
Okay.
You hear me?
All right. I need a vote to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And to announce that we took a vote during our executive session to support the request by the coalition, I don't even remember the whole name of this, ECMC?
MCEC.
MCEC, close. And other individuals to intervene in the lawsuit between the Hampshire Recreation LLC versus the planning board. There will be legal papers filed to that end tomorrow, and this will be public. This is public knowledge. Okay, and all we now need to do is say goodbye to Betty Ann before we adjourn our meeting. Thank you for all your
Hi,
help.
Betty Ann. Thank you.
For the 2.5 years I've been on the planning board, and it's only been 7-8 months since I've been chair. It seems like it has been longer than that. Has it really only been that long? Oh my God. Oh, okay. So maybe that's what's causing my heart problems, you know?
Could be.
Yeah, stress. Okay, so thank you, Betty Ann, and we wish you well in the future. And
Thank you so much.
But you're a member of our community now, so maybe we'll see you around. Once we can go outside
For a little while.
Right.
Submit an application.
Right. Okay, so we need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Madam Chair, if I may, after you adjourn the meeting, your staff has a couple of items to discuss with the board. That's all.
If we have a quorum, then we need to keep it on the meeting.
We need to keep it on the meeting, so let's not adjourn. Okay, I forgot.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
it would be, at that point, it's a work session, so even if it's a quorum, it's a work session. So.
Yeah, no, we have to keep it. We have to keep it as a public meeting. So,
all right, fair enough. Well, public hearing, but nonetheless, just so you know, first thing, one of the things that I'm working on, that I'll be working on as your planner, is working on board efficiency, and that's communication really between the boards. You know, how applications are moving between the planning board, the architectural review board, and the Harbor Coastal Commission, and so forth. So that's one thing. Question for you all as board members. I know right now you're receiving the plans electronically. Would you like at least one hard copy? Is it difficult for you to follow, you know, see, I have 2 monitors, so I can see the plans as people are talking about them and still be able to watch whatever's going on in terms of the video. Would it help if you had one hard copy? I'm not sure if everybody has 2 monitors to be able to do that. Of just the plans, not necessarily the other background information, but just the plans.
Well, we always requested hard copies of the plans, or 4 out of 5 of us did until COVID. And then we were told that, you know, we had to work electronically. I also have 2 monitors. I can view everything. The problem is I can't take notes on it. So if I see a plan, I want to write on it question marks or whatever. So it would be nice, but I don't know how we physically get that.
Oh, that staff will work that out. So.
That is something you also have to discuss with Jerry Barbario, the village manager. As of right now, in our local emergency orders, we are only permitting electronic review. We are not providing paper copies. And that was partially at the time because there was no staff in the office to be able to make those paper copies. So that's something that ultimately Jerry will have to decide because it's his discretion as to what goes into those local emergency orders. So I think that's something we need to take up with Jerry first. And then
Fair enough. Okay. I didn't know. I was bringing it to board's attention.
As well as there was staff that delivered the documents to the board members, which, when things go back to somewhat of a normal, then I'm sure we'd be able to have that go back once the executive order is lifted. But at this time, we can't request that staff deliver the documents to the board members.
All right.
Under normal circumstances, when I'm home, I have 2 monitors, a bigger one that I can kind of see plans on. I don't have that right now, so it was difficult to look at the plans for the second application tonight. But even if I had them, I think we needed somebody to walk us through what they were too, because this is a different request, a somewhat different request. So. But thank you for asking about our well-being, because it is hard to look at things online, especially when you're of a generation where you're used to seeing paper.
All right, and then two other quick things. The one thing that I'm suggesting that I've noticed with most of the boards here in the village is I think it would be helpful if the boards had like a work session. So you have your regular public meeting, and then they actually have a work session beforehand. We have an opportunity to actually talk with staff and consultants, and you can ask whatever questions. Again, it would be public. It would be a public meeting. The public would not be able to participate because it's not a public hearing, but you could at least go through the agenda as a board and be able to have conversation about topics before your actual board meeting. It's just a thought.
We can kick it around. I mean, the way it's done now, and I didn't know this until I became the chair, was that we have that agenda conference call. We used to do a meeting when we were, or a conference call when we could meet. What I did when I started to become chair is I then took that information and that discussion with staff, and I shared it with the other board members so that they understood what the agenda was, what we were hoping to accomplish at each meeting. I did not get that when I was a member of the planning board. So I thought I certainly would have welcomed that when I was a member of the planning board and not the chair. So that's why I did it for everyone else. You guys will have to tell me whether you found that helpful or not, and whether that's enough. Personally, I don't want any more meetings. The planning board meets twice a month as it is.
That's my next thing. From staff perspective, staff has a lot of meetings to attend from between your board, meeting twice a month, the zoning board, the Board of Architectural Review, and the Coastal Commission. And how would you feel about having, instead of meeting, you meet twice a month, you would still if you have a work session, you would still meet twice a month. You'd have one meeting as your work session, and the second meeting would actually be your public hearing. So you would have one public hearing a month, but you'd have a work session before.
Well, since I actually,
that's just my.
Yeah, I actually spent 5 years on Harbor Coastal Zone with one meeting a month, and Betty Ann can attest to the fact that sometimes those meetings went on till midnight. Personally, I prefer 2 shorter meetings, and because of the frequency, we can move an application quicker if we're just missing a piece of information, which certainly a work session would. I sometimes think, gee, I'd really like a certain piece of information, but I know I don't want to bother staff, and I don't want to poll my fellow board members because it gets close to having an illegal meeting. So I end up waiting till the meeting to say, oh, I think it'd be helpful to have X, Y, Z, which does slow things down a little bit.
Just to your point, if you had the work session, then that would come out during the course of the work session. The applicant staff would be prepared to be able to get you that information ahead of time.
But then they'd have to wait. They'd be waiting a full month before they actually appeared for us to, speak with them and have the public hearing, which I think they're used to coming every 2 weeks. And if they can move it along, I don't know. Betty Ann, you're probably in a better position.
Yeah, but with all due respect, this is the thing, and this is, I hear you from the applicant, from trying to move applications, but again, you essentially have 2 staff people. Myself, Betty Ann is gone. And so basically it's just me trying to operate all 4 of these boards and keep you all coordinated. There's, from a timing perspective, I want to make sure I can give you the appropriate amount of time that's needed to make sure that you all are efficient.
I'm assuming, although it'd be impossible, I'm assuming that Betty Ann will, they're going to try to replace her to maybe 70% capacity. What are we going to really get? But
Thank you.
there will be a person in that position at some point.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that you're stuck with it until then, I guess. But yeah, let's kick it around. I'm open.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to. My goal as chair is to move things along. I think I'm pretty good at that. I know people are winning bets on guessing how long the meetings are going to be. Not me, because you don't include me in the pool, and I can influence it. But
you have a conflict of interest.
Yeah, right. But I think what we're doing now seems to be working. We do get the information in advance, and if we do feel like we need another piece of information, we usually give people a heads up so that they can prepare. Like Frank knew what we were going to ask. He can prepare and either be here or get us information. As soon as we see the packages, normally we get the package, we get everything, and most people look at it that weekend. So that gives us plenty of opportunity then to get back to staff and say, we're going to ask the following questions, or we're going to need this piece of information. And more often than not, we get it before the meeting. But if it's something that we need to discuss as a board, we get it at the meeting and we discuss it. So I personally think the way things are going now works well. I hope the applicants feel that way. I do think that there are times when we can move things a little faster. But issues come up because there are problems with, like we had tonight, problems with the code and conflicts, and we have to ask Christy to write long memos to explain things to us and whatnot. But I personally think right now we're doing a pretty good job as a planning board. I'm shooting for most efficient land use board title. I don't know who votes on that, but I'm putting myself in there.
I vote.
The planning board is in contention. Of course, there are only 3 land use boards, but I hear what you're saying, and I thank you for and I think we're respectful of the staff's time, but there are things that happen at the staff level that we should be aware of, like the appointment of a new planning director. It would have been nice to know that you were coming on board and your name, And so, we welcome you aboard and we welcome your ideas, and we'll all work together to make things as efficient and as smooth as they can be.
Absolutely.
And to Cindy's concern with the wanting additional information, if I had known that you were interested in, or if any of the board members were interested in seeing the SWIP or as-built for the project as early as this evening, it was not a problem for me to find that. I was lucky that we had it in the system and I was able to locate it. You do have the SWIP and the as-built on that project. I would have been glad to have provided it before the meeting. That might have helped inform your decisions. So
I think we would have needed Brian or somebody from AKLF to interpret for us, so I can't read a SWIP.
Yeah, I don't think that would have moved it along any quicker. But I was, I wasn't sure how much you were in the office, and I didn't know what access you had, so I wasn't going to bother you with it. Maybe
everything is digital. Everything's digital. You can get it from anywhere. She could be in Mongolia. You could be,
but I'm not.
Right, I know you're in the office. Okay. William, did you have anything else that you wanted to?
No, that's all. That's all.
Okay. All right. We'll get used to one another, and we'll figure it out and do the best thing for the village. I mean, we're here to serve the village.
Absolutely.
That's my attitude. The applicants, if they have something that helps the village, then we're here to help them too. We do have applicants who are not always looking out for the best interests of the village. And that's what we're here to do. So
Absolutely.
that's the job of the planning board. So with that note, now we need a motion to adjourn.
So
So moved. Oh, second.
And I think we lost Lou.
We're just,
So
we're the only ones left.
it's just the three of us. So all in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Enjoy the rest of the
Happy
summer.
August, everybody.
Yes,
Take
good.
care.
Best of luck to you, Betty Ann, and
Thank you.
have a good August, everyone, and we'll reconvene in September, and we'll be discussing the tree law. That at least will be on the agenda.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, everybody, and we did not lose our power.